is a process, and that's good. So
Yeah.
hi everybody, this is Nicholas Tanek, your kinky friends. We have the Dignified Hedonist with us. Oh, we're gonna talk about slutty activism and pickup and being a pickup artist. we're gonna definitely discuss that, the whole dynamic, I guess pros and cons of that too, but definitely
hmm
slutty activism. And we're talking Sarah, Dignified. Say hi.
Hi, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Nicholas, and with all of your kinky friends, and hopefully a bunch of my kinky friends too. Hello, everybody who's watching live. I can't actually see the comments or the stream here on my
I'll put 'em
screen. Okay, great. So if you're here, if you're in the room, say hi. I would love to shout you out.
Definitely say hi. Promote everything you want. So, all right, what's going on? How so far? The weekend just started. How's your
It
day?
did. How's
Yeah.
the day?
Or how's
It's
how's the
a
week so far? Or what are your plans? What's going on?
it's been quite a week. I'm currently visiting my family in Vermont. So normally I live way far away overseas in Lithuania, and I like to come home this time of year because, well, I mean, you're from New Jersey, right? Or, Vermont. Vermont's like this beautiful place where all the leaves change in autumn time. So, yeah, I've been leaf peeping and walking around outside and getting cold and drinking pumpkin spice things. It's my favorite time of the year.
Yeah, I always liked the fall. I didn't like the whole when I had to go back to school, but I liked the I don't know, like the goth kid in me likes the fall. You know what I mean? Like not only the colors, but everyone's kind of going through because fall leads to winter, which is signifies death in a way. Kind of people, the fall people seem to get a little more, since winter's coming, they get more randy, I guess. Anyway, Apple Muncie says hi Sarah,
Hi, Apple. I'm so happy you're here.
and then of course Stranger Unknown says hello Nicholas and Goddess Sarah. Oh, you're a goddess.
Oh, well, hi.
So the Dignified Hedonist. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, well, here's one thing. I'm not the dignified hedonist.
You're
My
a
whole thing is about anyone being able to become a dignified hedonist. And what do I mean by that? So, dignity, it's from the Latin root word dignitas, which means worthy or worthiness, right?
Mhm.
And I think this is the element that's often been missing, because like hedonism gets this bad rep. Like it's like all about, oh, just doing things for your pleasure and disregarding everyone else. But when you add that element of dignity, you care for the worthiness of everyone involved, your partners and yourself. And then suddenly we're on to something. So helping people to embody and practice dignified hedonism is the core of my work, and I think it's probably what I was brought to planet Earth to do.
Nice. Interesting. Okay, so tell us your story. What inspired you to embrace this idea?
How long have you got, Nicholas? Like
You got a show.
fair dues. I mean the TLDR version, which is still going to be kind of,
Don't tell
longish.
it. That's what we're here for.
I grew up in the United States, and in
What part?
particular, the place and time where I was situated. I was a teenager during the early 2000s when there was the big push around purity culture. So that was sort of
Oh yeah.
the right. That was sort of the air I was breathing and the water I was swimming in, because that's just what was in the world around. And I remember feeling so out of place because basically, since puberty showed up, like sex and sexuality and sexual expression have been a fascination for me, have been a place where I'm drawn to, and also just feel like such an integral part of me that I remember being young and being like, yeah, but why? Why do the evangelicals say sex is so wrong? Like, what's so wrong about it? And I remember when I was young, I used to like wonder, is it some sort of conspiracy? Like, do they all know what they're saying about sex is untrue, but they say it anyway because they don't want to lose face. Like that was kind of my very young person's wonderings about what's going on. And at the same time, there was quite a lot of slut shaming that would go on at school, right? I was bullied quite a lot in school as well. That's a big part of my story. And a lot of that bullying would center on, oh, well, no man will ever find you attractive. Nobody's going to marry you. Nobody's going to love you. You're going to die alone. Like that was the refrain that my bullies kind of jammed down my throat for years. So I kind of like went through the motions as I understood them, right? Was struggling to connect with people. I got married very young to my first husband. And that was kind of, it was one of those things that, wow, okay, so we dated for 3 years. So now it's time to get married, right? That's just what you do. Like, that's what's quote unquote normal. And that didn't work out, I think, because there was this fundamental incompatibility we had with each other. And part of that was rooted in this sexuality that I tried to suppress, right? And it wound up blowing up in a way that hurt both of us. And so like I'm not proud about that, and at the same time that was a pivotal moment in my life because that's where things started to change. That's where I allowed myself to get curious about, okay, well, what's possible for me as a sexual being, what exists. And fortunately, when all of this was happening, I wasn't in Vermont, right? I was in London. And London, for anybody listening, has such a great sex positive culture, sex positive network that's present there. And
I went.
so, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, the Miss Kim Rob. Oh my God, Miss Kim Rob, Madame C, and Jessica Wood are people been on the show several times, and oh, they're calling me to London. I gotta find my way there. Like,
I
I really
strongly
like.
recommend a visit because there's so many wonderful people. There are so many wonderful communities. And it was in those community spaces that I started to figure out who I was. And more than that, to be like, hey, this isn't just okay. Like, this is great.
Yeah,
And
right?
yeah. And then, like what was happening in parallel, I had a corporate job, as you do when you live in London, because it costs all the money to live there. And I was starting to burn out. I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, so I had a 2-week vacation at the end of 2014. And I was thinking to myself, if I could do anything, right? If money was no object, what would I do? And I kept having this idea come up and I kept going, no, no, not that. But it was persistent. So eventually then I typed into Google work in sex. And I'm sure you can imagine the
Oh,
kind of results that I got. But that search led me to discover that there's a field called sexology, that it's a real thing, and that it is possible to work in this field. And so I trained as a sex coach with Dr. Patty Britton, and I've been in private practice since 2016. And I found my way to dignified hedonism as the framework for how I work with people, basically just through a lot of clinical experience, aka working with lots and lots of clients. And I've worked with hundreds of people now over the years in my workshops and as one-on-one clients. And this brings together everything that I've learned, right?
mhm.
So I'll pause there. That's like my, origin story to present day. If there's anywhere you want me to zoom in, just let me know.
Well, I want to talk about slutty activism.
Oh, yes, please.
Slutty activism. That's something that I hold close to my heart because I know a lot of sluts and I care. And
Yeah.
no, but no, it literally. I mean, that is the truth. But um, but yeah, the literally the fight for the right to be sexually expressive is something that I feel is very important. So please tell us more about slutty activism.
Sure. And so, what I'll say here is that while some slutty activists are out there protesting against things like Sesta Fosta or the rollback of reproductive rights or the rollback of civil rights in the United States and elsewhere, right? You don't have to be out in the streets to be a slutty activist because the way that I talk about it and this concept of what slutty activism is, I think is actually one of the most potent ways that we as individuals can push back against this creeping rise of neo-fascism that we feel all around us and that is spreading all over the globe. And what that means to me, a slutty activist is someone who shatters the toxic narratives about how dating, sex, and relationships are supposed to be or should be or have to be by acting as a living example of a different way to do dating, sex, and relationships. And it often comes down a lot of times to like being living examples of this care, of this compassion, and of this direct and clear communication, which are often so missing from mainstream approaches to dating, sex, and relationships. So that's what I see as slutty activism. And you could be a super connector. That's what I think of when I think of people who have, hundreds or thousands of partners in their lifetime, because what you're doing in each of those interactions is connecting, right? You could
Hmm.
be a super connector and a slutty activist. You could be in a consciously chosen monogamous marriage and be a slutty activist. It's possible in both cases. So I'll pause there and say, does that make sense? Does that kind of
Yeah, it
whet your
does.
appetite for this idea?
So, would you say that I'm engaging in slutty activism by doing all this stuff?
Yes, provided that you're embodying these different principles and practices, which I think you are, right? I don't think you're out here talking about divine feminine and divine masculine and being a gender essentialist or
No.
like I don't think you're approaching your relationships transactionally, which so very many people do, whether they realize that or not.
That's a very good point. It's a very good, astute observation.
Well, I mean, a lot of people in the kink community are slutty activists by nature because, right, one of the most important things is like, you know, do you talk about sex before having it? And I'm gonna assume, yes, like you know how to do negotiation, you know how to do direct communication about your desires. Like to last for any length of time inside of a kink community, which is so, you know, where reputation is really important. You don't get
Yes,
away for very long with coercive, manipulative, or non-consensual behavior, right? That's not tolerated. And wouldn't it be great if all of society were like that, right? Where we were all taught to flat out reject coercive, manipulative, and non-consensual behavior. But yes, so Nicholas, I would assume that a lot of what you're doing is in fact slutty activism.
thanks. I'm going to add that to my resume. I get my title.
Please do.
Okay. Nicholas Tanek, slutty activist. It sounds like a great. It sounds like a pulp novel. Like,
Oh, like a young adult fiction
yeah,
detective series.
yeah, exactly. So,
Mm,
okay. So, what advice would you give? All right, I have a friend named Randy. Okay, and I wrote a book called Your Kinky Friends, and she's a major part of it. One of the her
mm,
part of her story is she was a self-confessed slut. She loved it. She was proud of it. She she there was the Million Slut March. She
yep.
marched in it. You know,
Excellent.
she was and she was, let's just say she was delightfully dirty. Let's put it that way.
Yay.
With everyone. It made a lot of people feel uncomfortable. I personally loved it. I loved
Mm,
the fact that she did that. Um, and it wasn't something that she tried hard to do, just something that she just was just like that. So it wasn't an act, but
gotcha.
she dealt with tons of sex shaming. tons, like all her life, all through college, through yeah, I first met her in college, and then through time, especially when like 4chan came out and
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
like that. And or there was that website from that douchebag, Is Anyone Up? Where they would, I don't know if you know about that.
That
Um,
one I don't.
oh,
Feel like I
that's
should
it's
be
a
taking notes.
oh yeah, there was this guy, and he got arrested and everything. He would he wanted to basically, what's the word I'm looking for? Some girl broke his heart, so he got all the naked pictures and what's it,
Oh,
porn or
revenge porn.
revenge porn? Yeah, yeah, it was shit like that. And so he made a site just for that.
Ugh, that's
So,
awful.
so not only is that, yes, that's awful, but on top of that, what they did is they would hack into other computers and get private documents or private pictures that people didn't share, that people never they just had, and then they'd put them up, and then people would rate it and say shit and stuff like that. Yeah, you got into a lot of trouble, and
So
it
on
deserved
that
it.
front, quick interjection. Top tip: take your nudes on like Polaroid or like old school film, because man, like when you've got a digital version of something, like unless you're super careful, and even if you are, it can wind up places where you never intended it to go, or like keep it on media that's not linked to the internet, like a USB stick.
And plus, like film and Polaroids and stuff like that, they just look cooler. There's something more interesting about physical media than there is digital media. That's why
Mm.
I like when I wrote a book and I got it. I'm looking at it like it's one good thing. It's
Like
cool to
it's
have it on
real.
Kindle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Speaking of, Kincaid McKinn says I would read that series. Yeah, I would read
Yeah,
that too.
Kincaid. So Nicholas Tanek, slutty activist. Let's add that to the list.
You just got one of a new book idea for me.
Love it. Love it.
Okay, so yeah. Oh, so she was basically shamed and bullied. Um, yeah, yes, I can hear you, Sarah. She was bullied and shamed. So when someone is dealing with bullying, because a lot of times it not just comes from the average person or people who are faceless off the internet. It could be literally in your town, in your city where you live, in your family, in your
Mhm.
family members, all that stuff. How would you suggest someone dealing with that? Or if that's an issue for them, they are proud sluts. They are, dignified hedonists, but not everybody agrees with that way of thinking. How do you deal with that?
So, I mean, I think there's a bit of a multifaceted approach that you can take if you're currently experiencing slut shaming. And I think you're very right, Nicholas, that it depends whether that slut shaming is taking place online, coming from anonymous people who you might not um, know, right? This faceless person versus people in your town, people who are in the post office, people who are in your family. And so, one of the first things, and something I always say to my clients or my listeners or my friends is, you are the expert in your life and you know what is safe and what is not safe for you. Because for some people, to be out and out fully as themselves in certain contexts is not safe. And so I would never presume to tell somebody to do something that makes them feel unsafe. So, with that out of the way, let's say you're out, you're not in you've judged yourself not to be in danger for doing that and people are giving you shit. So, or people are giving, I don't know, can we swear here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, people are giving you shit, people are giving you a hard time. First thing is like you get to choose who you allow into your life and who you don't. So boundary setting is one of these things that as slut activists, as sluts, we have like some pretty good experience that we can transfer from one area of our life into others. And so as we know, right, boundaries are for us, not for other people. So if, Aunt Mildred can't keep her mouth shut about what a hussy you are, what you can say is, okay, Mildred, I'm not available for this kind of conversation. If you bring that up again, I will leave. If you bring that up again, I will hang up the phone. You can set those firm boundaries with people who are close people in that way. And I don't know, it also kind of depends on your personality, right? Because if there's, I don't know, a group of gossipy people in your town who are just like snickering and making faces, like sometimes it can be fun to call that bluff and just roll with it, to just be more you, or like, you know, dial it up to 11 if you're walking by and you hear that. Or like sometimes what I love to do because I'm how I am, and this doesn't just apply to slut shaming, it's kind of anybody who's doing things to make people around uncomfortable, is to just like call out what's going on, just saying like, hey, you know, what you're doing is making other people uncomfortable, could you leave please? Or hey, you know, I hear you laughing, like what do you hope to accomplish by this? And
I
then
like
just
that.
wait.
I
Or
definitely.
another one is if somebody tries to make a joke at your expense, is to just pretend like you don't get it, even if you're feeling that shame or that other reaction in your body because you know what they're trying to do. Just pretend like you don't get it and go, wait, can you explain that to me? How does that actually work? And like, and then just wait. Like, if you can get comfortable with silence and just holding that silence and letting them start to squirm and feel
Oh yeah,
awkward,
yeah, I've
that
done
is
that.
a great way to stop it from happening again in the future. It's particularly powerful too if you can do that holding eye contact, just a neutral face eye contact, ask your question, and then shut up and let them stew in their own juices. And if you get really uncomfortable making eye contact with people, here's a little trick. Just look at this spot on their forehead. It'll look like you're looking them in the eye, even though you won't have to feel the discomfort of actually looking them in the eye for that period of time.
That's
So
good to
that's,
know.
you know, there's a variety of ways that you can deal with slut shaming. And I think, regardless of where on that spectrum you ultimately find yourself, one of the most important things you can do is to be part of a supportive, accepting, celebrating community, right? Not just where you're tolerated, but where you're celebrated in the fullness of who you are and all of your kinks, right? Like, that is so important. And it helps to give me life. I imagine
Yeah,
it helps to give you life too, Nicholas,
yeah,
with all of your kinky friends.
yeah. No, seriously, like I found, the beauty I think of the kink community is the the comfort level in being uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, because everyone is, if you think about it, it's really kind of beautiful. So like everybody, okay, I have this kind of urge or this fetish or this sexual thing, and I'm gonna go to places who all we all kind of feel that way at the same time.
mm.
So what can we do to kind of do something about this in a positive way? That's what I like about it. And the connection is basically involved with the people. It makes it really it's surrounding yourself with like-minded people is important. So therefore you're what Aunt Mildred is not invited to the munch.
Well, and here's like, so again, just to put that slutty activism twist, when your Aunt Mildred sees, instead of sees you going into a shame spiral and freaking out, and then she gets her little power trip by calling you a hussy, if instead she sees you standing in your power in recognition of who you are, setting boundaries, and not feeling ashamed of your sexuality,
Mhm,
that's being a living example of something different, right?
mhm.
And that is the kind of thing that can have a ripple effect. It might be the thing that gets her to pause and maybe reconsider things. Maybe not. Maybe she's irredeemable. I don't know your Aunt Mildred. But what I'm saying
You
is,
just made up the name.
yeah, I did. And I don't have an Aunt Mildred. So,
It's
you know,
fine, but still, I know what you mean.
yeah.
Aunt
But
Mildred, a
yeah.
cake on her house.
But so that again is a way of showing up in the world and being like, I'm not like, why would I be ashamed of this? This is one of the best parts of being who I am. And that
They can't argue
presence,
with that.
that like that is powerful, Nicholas. Like, it's so powerful. And it's powerful not just in this interrelation. It's powerful in a systemic way, right? Because this causes a ripple effect. Like, when you go and you model something for a partner, especially if they're from general population, right? When you mosey outside of the munch crew, right? When you leave the community to go among the general population, like sometimes you can have a huge impact, right? If you decide to, I don't know, talk about safer sex before having it, right? A lot of people, like I was the first person to ever do that with them. And then they're like, yeah, it was awkward, but then I felt really good afterwards. And I'm like, yes, that's
Yeah.
why you do it. And
Yeah.
if they then take that forward, even if imperfectly, and they're going ahead and doing that practice with their partners, and then their partners do it with theirs, that creates a huge shift, right? And
It's a
that's
ripple.
where I start getting excited, right? Like that is slutty activism.
Nice. Nick Gothic says, wow, employing social awkwardness as a weapon.
You got it. Hi, Nick. It's so great that you're here.
That's awesome. That is really cool. So now going into education, a lot of my friends, especially friends who used to be like doms or in the sex industry, um, you know, they're starting to teach classes or just get into education in general.
Mhm.
Um, there's there are dom classes, there are couples classes, there's the erotic blueprints, there's tantra sex and stuff like that. I'm just my focus of this question is education, is people getting into education.
Gotcha.
So um, and like you said, you do it full time. So what are some of the, not the misconceptions, or what are the kind of unknowns of being someone who's in the sex education field?
So I think probably the biggest misconception among the population at large is that it must be so easy because sex sells. I mean, it's like you've got
Have
all
you
the
seen the
challenges
production
of,
value of this show?
well, it's lovely. I think your production value is great. Like let's be kind here. And also, it's like if you're going to work in this field, whether that's as, like a pro dom or a sex coach, or also in terms of delivering education to, especially if you're delivering education to individuals and consumers, though it's also true if you're looking to train professionals, I think maybe just to a slightly lesser degree. Like one of the biggest challenges is actually like letting people know that you exist, because we are often so hamstrung in terms of advertising ourselves, especially those of us that are sex positive, those of us that are pleasure positive, those of us that are slut positive, right? You can go on Facebook and you can advertise like a Kegel strength measuring machine by promoting it as like a medical device. So,
Oh
like,
yeah.
if you're medicalizing genitals, or if you're talking about a bunch of bullshit about like divine masculine, divine feminine, like dating psychic. I got served an ad on Facebook for a dating psychic, and I was like, this joker can advertise, but I can't. And so we find our other ways, right? Like this doesn't get us down. I think it's just more this misconception that, oh, like working in sex must be easy because everybody wants it. And it's like, my friend, working with human sexuality, like in addition, I think it's sacred work. I think what we do is incredibly powerful and important and needed in
Yes,
the
without a doubt.
world.
Yeah.
And at the same time, in terms of the like, you know, the business angle, the being able to pay bills and eat because hey, we all still live under capitalism and those are realities, is like we face a number of challenges that other entrepreneurs don't. And I think that that's often missing. Plus, we're selling to a market that deep down, a lot of us are sitting on top of this mountain of sexual shame. And it's very challenging for people to decide to make change in areas where they're experiencing large amounts of shame, especially if you're taking this more positive approach rather than just needling those pain points until someone can't stand it anymore. It's kind of like, how the diet industry just drives home that stake of fat phobia to try to
Oh
extract
yeah.
money from people. Like there's plenty of people, pickup artists, I know we're going to talk about them in a moment, that love to just needle men with you're such a loser and you're going to die alone until they can extract money through pain. So for those of us who are trying to earn a living and are spreading the gospel of pleasure, we run into a unique set of challenges, I think is what I'm trying to say. So, props, solidarity to the others, the other sex educators who are doing the good work, who you've spoken with here. But that's what I would say is one of the biggest misconceptions.
There's a short film with she's in SNL. She plays Debbie Downer in SNL. She does. You know what I'm talking about? I forgot her name.
Yeah.
But
Okay. It'll come back.
There's a short film by Amaletto, which is a production company. And this is not a comedy bit or anything like that. It's a real film, but it's a short film. And about I guess a divorcee, a woman who's divorced, who's a teacher. And what she does is she, very quietly goes to sex education course, how to be a dominatrix course.
Okay.
And of course, like there's kinky people all around, but she's a history teacher. She has her notebook. She's taking notes and stuff like that through the whole thing. It's adorable, right?
Yeah.
And she goes on like Tinder and or some and finds a young man who had a thing for his history professor. So the ending. So basically, it's like they find love because of that, and it was a lot of it. And then, like when they finally explore it at the end of it, which is very minimal in the film, but that's the climax of it. She does such a great job because what she learned in the dominatrix class. So education, it's very important, my friends.
Well, and I mean, that's the thing. Like, so one of the other things that can be a bit frustrating, right, is loads of people are like, oh, I don't need to go to a workshop. I don't need to study this. We all just know it, right? And it's like,
it's not the truth. There's always more stuff we can learn. That's why I love school. I loved going to school. When I graduated Rutgers, I loved just the aspect, the energy of just everybody wanting to learn. Sometimes they had to because of credits or whatever, but like the general atmosphere of the school is like smart people doing smart things, trying to be smarter, which is really enlightening and fun.
Well, if you needed any reason to like just the next time you see one of your sex educator friends advertising their workshops, if you needed an excuse to go, which you don't, just go because it's great, is that you will be in a room of other people who are there to learn about those things. And that's probably going to be a group of people that you're going to enjoy being a part of, right?
Definitely. So DL Joey says, hi, Sarah.
Hi.
No, and I look at it the same way with when I go to lunches. Last night I went to a dungeon party for my
oh, lovely.
A friend of mine, Catnip. Catnip's a submissive, and it was like everybody gave brownies. Like it was a big party and stuff like that. But going there,
what is it with kinksters and baked goods? Seriously, it's a thing. Everywhere in the world I've ever been, you go to a kinky party and somebody's made cupcakes or brownies or cookies.
I'm telling you, I'm trying to get together a dominatrix cooking show.
There's someone I need to put you in touch with, my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Selena Chris, who is very much a kinkster and very much a baker and has been thinking about the same thing. So maybe you could collaborate on this.
Like, smart people doing smart things together. That's what I wanted to ask. That's awesome. Let's make that happen.
All right. I'll put you in touch.
Yeah, please. What were we talking about? Education.
You were talking about the party that you were at the dungeon, and they were all giving brownies, and that's when I interrupted you. My apologies.
Yeah, no, but like that's the thing, like going to a sex course. So like someone goes to one of your courses, they're going also to meet like-minded people. I mean, that's part of the experience of going to a class is we're all here to learn the same thing. And just like a munch or a social gathering, that they're there to do the same thing. Your interests may not be exactly the same, but they're on that category. You know what I mean? So
well, yeah, it's really validating to suddenly go, oh, I'm not all alone. It's not just me. Look at all of these other people, this irrefutable evidence that in fact I am not alone. Like that's an important part of the journey. And I think every one of us who's been on this path has some sort of moment like that.
That's what I was trying to get across. Like when I wrote a book called Your Kinky Friends, and that's what I'm trying to do with this. That all of us are alone. born alone, die alone, you know. And we're here just to connect with people, really, and to have a series of moments with people.
Hmm.
And so the kink community, and I think, and sexual education, or as you call it, and you call it slutty activism, though you can that's a perfect way to connect with people as well, and to learn to make yourself a better person. So I don't know.
Yes.
That's what I think. But pickup artists. Let's talk about pickup artists.
Sure. Let's talk about pickup artists, Nicholas. I always love doing this.
So you've done work and you wrote about the economic metaphor in the pickup artist handbook. Tell us about that.
Sure. So I did my master's degree in sociology, specifically economic sociology, where you take a look how tools from economics can be used by sociology and vice versa to get a better idea about systemically what is going on with human behavior, right? And I wanted to do research about pickup artists in part because so very many of my clients were coming to me and were talking to me about the influence that pickup artists had had on their life. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I got to learn more about this. And so, like, of course, I decided to do a master's degree because, of course, it's what you do. And I had noticed when I started, I'd noticed in general, there's a lot of economic language that people use when they talk about dating, sex, and relationships, right? I'm sure you've heard somebody say marriage market or about investing in somebody or about
Yeah.
hedging, one
We're talking about
relationship with
as,
another.
as a, it's a business. It's a deal. It's a transaction.
Right, or you hear
That's
people talking about sexual market value, right? That's a thing that a lot of PUAs oh my god, sorry. The comment from Kincaid just came up, and that is so good. I love
that
that.
was a good one.
Yeah, Kincaid says you should call it cake toppers, as in the name of the show.
Yeah,
Chef's
yeah.
kiss. That's perfect. Right, so
We could do like the
where
Food Network with a dominatrix baking channel, or Femba.
a whole channel, not just a single show. Oh my
Everybody, because
goodness.
there's so many different personalities. Think
This
about
would be
it.
so good. Oh my goodness, like, this is just idea central here. But anyway, pickup artists, pickup artists. We're talking about pickup artists. And yeah, so I did this qualitative content analysis where I did close readings of 4 pickup artist handbooks. And what do those words mean? Qualitative content analysis just means and specifically I was doing a structuring something or other analysis. So basically, what kind of internal structure can I tease out from the material? And a close reading means like spending a very long time with each page of text because I was looking for and capturing metaphor as I was going through. And the 4 pickup artists whose work that I looked at, I read The Game by Neil Strauss, which is probably if a person has not heard of any other pickup artists, they've heard of The Game, they've heard of Neil Strauss. I looked at The Natural by Richard La Ruina, otherwise known as The Gambler. I looked at Bang by Rush V, and I looked at The Rational Male by Rollo Tomasi.
Oh,
They're hmm?
Rollo Tomasi. Yes. And would you ever see that movie Roger Dodger?
Why does this sound familiar? So, like, I wanna say no, but then I'm stopping because it feels
It's the
familiar. Tell
guy.
me
The
more.
guy who played Mark Zuckerberg, and the guy from Kyle. No, was it? What? It wasn't Kyle. Was it Kyle MacLachlan? No, no, it wasn't Kyle MacLachlan. But he's in the Spanish Prisoner. Him and the guy who played Jesse Eisenberg. Yeah, played.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's basically his an uncle takes his nephew out to pick up women, and he's a full on pickup artist.
Okay.
So the nephew goes to him and he goes, I want to basically get laid, and they go out in New York City for a night to try to make that happen, and it's interesting when it comes to you're talking about pickup artists. It's an interesting. kind of
Okay, I will have to check this
movie.
out because I'm
Check
very
this out.
curious to see how pickup is portrayed.
Yeah, Kincaid says, "Oh, the channel could be the Munch Network."
This has got to stop. I keep forgetting.
I know. All right, pickup artists.
Right, pickup artists. Yeah, so I thank you for the recommendation. I will check that out because like there's actually been a lot of popular media about pickup artists, like especially in the time immediately after the game came out and was such an international bestseller. There was a ton of interest, and there were the 2 seasons of VH1's show called The Pickup Artist, which featured Mystery, which is the pickup artist that Neil Strauss learned from. Like I think I even put this on Medium finally. I wrote an article titled like A Genealogy of Pickup Artists because it's almost like that. And so begat so and so begat so and so. Like which pickup artist learned from who, and looking at these lineages and seeing the ones that are like less awful and the ones that are totally awful and seeing what connections they have in common. Like it's a whole thing. And I can share that link with you, which you could add,
Oh, definitely, please.
in the notes. So if anybody wants to go deeper, plus my entire master's thesis is available to read for free on the internet. If you're like, damn, that sounds like a thesis I'd actually read, you would warm the cockles of my cold academic heart. Any researcher where it's like, wow, you actually want to read my research, like it feels very good. It's very that's my kink. No, that's not the only one, but I suppose that's
Oh,
one.
I get that. I totally get that. I totally understand that. All right. So, what are the worst examples in your mind, in your opinion, of a pickup that of pickup artists?
So, I mean, I think pretty much everybody who's in the sosuave.net branch, aka family tree of pickup artists. So that includes Rollo Tomasi, that includes Rush V, though it no longer includes Rush V, as he's pulled all of his books down from like you can't buy them anymore. And he's now like a born again evangelical after being like an alt right something. Like he's done the whole like gnarly fascist pipeline from top to bottom. So like that's a whole other story. We could talk about Roosh all day. I don't want to though. um, there's a lot of coercion, there's a lot of manipulation, and there's no like when you read it, like if you read Roosh's description of what sex is, you kind of are like, wait, so for people who are so obsessed about getting laid, that's what you think of sex? It's this very detached, dehumanized piece of writing that has a sense of almost disgust about it. And it's like, what are you doing if all of this and you're actually disgusted by sex itself? Well, then that means you're not having sex for sex as an end in itself, right? You're not doing it for the pleasure, you're doing it for some other reason. Probably to validate your sense of masculinity or sense of success as a man because you're having sex with women. Is my general take on that. So, like some of the ugliest stuff, like they talk about like pushing through last minute resistance and talking about tactics you can use to basically coerce somebody into having sex with you, which is like, I don't know, you read some of those things and it just sounds like, well, it's uncomfortable to read and it's also kind of sad because what does it mean for you if you're having to coerce somebody into having sex for you, right? That's not going to feel good. That's not going to feel like you're wanted or you're there with somebody who really wants to be with you if you're having to use lots of tricks to get somebody to like let you do a thing to them. Like it's very, you know,
Sad. It's
it's very
extremely sad.
sad. Yeah.
It's extremely sad. Yeah, but like I I believe that you should really just go where the love is. You know what I mean? Like if be around people who want to be around you. That's
Well, and so to that
that really
end,
makes a
like
difference in life.
to that end, if somebody's gonna do any traditional pickup, which don't, like, come and learn from me instead. Like, it's an alternative to pickup artistry that works. It's part of what I teach. Um, But like if you are going to listen to any like classic PUA, the one to listen to is Richard La Ruina. Like I was so surprised by how different his approach was compared to the other three. And I think it boils down to just that guy really likes women and that guy really likes to fuck. Like he likes sex and pleasure in and of themselves, not for any reason other than that. And so even though well, you know, and like that
I like
seems like
that
such a simple
guy.
and basic thing. Oh, you will love this dude. Like he has 3 video games out in the Super Seducer series. Like they're available on Steam. Get one, play it, or watch a couple of people playing it on YouTube. Like I'm actually really fond of these games. I own them all. So
I will definitely check that. I'll definitely check that out. So, all right, before I get to my next question, I do want to mention that when you said Rollo Tomasi, I think of the movie L.A. Confidential. I don't know if you know the story behind that, but the L.A. Confidential is the name of a fictional code word for who killed the person. You know, so it's like the dying person says, "Who killed you?" Rollo Tomasi, and it's just the used to kind of so yeah. That's what I thought.
well, and
Anyway,
it's a
I have a
stage name, like, and it
yeah.
like because that's like they all have their stage names, which aren't their real names, and like Rollo Tomasi is the only person who I couldn't figure out what his real name, what his real identity was. Like he's actually made sure there's no trace of that on the internet, and he's quite prominent. He always speaks or he often speaks at the 21 convention, which is kind of a, I don't know, it's a bit of a manosphere love fest, as it were. It's kind of like I always like keep an eye on what they're doing with some morbid curiosity, though, you know, hashtag trigger warning, like they're not a sex positive group of people, and they've got very rigid and gender deterministic views on what people are. So I'll put that up there. But yeah, like he has this rambling blog called The Rational Male, which he's managed to spin off into like 3 or 4 word salad books. Like he's the most difficult one to read out of the group because they're unedited blog posts that are very rambly and repeat themselves all the time. And like reading his book, I just got so exhausted. Like I had to keep taking naps because it was dense, but like not very nutritious. You know, whereas like reading
Oh,
Neil Strauss, who's a professional journalist, is easy. It just so smooth, and he's a beautiful writer. Like it's, you know, which can kind of obscure some of the not very nice parts of what he writes. But anyway, I'll pause because you wanted to say something.
well, I was thinking about pickup artists, and if we flip, you know, what do you think of female, or what's your opinion on female pickup artists? Because I know some women who are love men and just love sex, you know,
Hmm.
and who are very, very intelligently aggressive about it.
So when you say female pickup artists, do you mean women who are teaching men how to pick up women, or do you mean
No, I didn't think about
women
that
who
because
are teaching each other strategies to pick up men?
no, I'm thinking about just living really like that lifestyle, and you know, being that person. And yeah, yeah, they do
Because, like,
train, they
so
do teach
somebody
them.
who's just out here being a slut, I don't think of them as pickup artists, right?
No,
You can
no, no.
just,
But like for example, holding classes on how to teach women to to basically pick up and get laid.
yeah, yeah. So, like, I teach classes that teach people how to get laid, how to approach, how to make your intentions clear, how to pick the best context to find other people who want the same things as you. So, I don't think there's anything wrong at all with wanting to learn more about that or teaching that material. And I also don't think that the impulse that a lot of people, a lot of predominantly men, when we talk about pickup artistry, have in terms of saying, like, I don't know how to do this. I want someone to teach me how to do this. And the only people who are giving advice that seems to at least work a little bit are these guys, the pickup artists. Because, you know, I tell my mom this and she just says, oh, well, just be yourself or just be nice. Or, you know, I, and like, I hear that over and over from my clients. And it's like, well, yeah, because it is about skills and it is about mindset. And you
Mhm.
can learn those things, right? It's not some like biologically fated destiny, right? It's like social skills. Sex is a
So
social skill. Kingsters know
so
that, right?
when a woman is trying to pick up somebody, what a
Mhm.
man, woman, whatever gender they were trying to pick up, but when a woman is doing it,
Yep.
right? Yep. Um, what would you say the major mistakes are made for like people who don't know, like who want to make this happen, but like you know they mess up. Everybody messes up.
So the major mistake women make is not approaching anybody. So, and that's in part because socially we're conditioned to be passive, right? Men are supposed to come over and ask you out. So actually I have another, like, it's reminding me of another article I have up on Medium called How to Date Women as a Woman, because I have coached a number of clients on this specifically, which is like, and especially specifically a lot of bisexual women who, you know, understand and have a process in their life for going about connecting with men, but then every time they try to do this with women, it's not working. Why? Well, because a lot of the heterosexual scripts that people fall into just don't work. And because if you're both just waiting for someone to approach you, nothing is ever going to happen. But like, I think this is advice just for people in general, because I think
Yeah.
many people struggle with approaching. And if you're always waiting to be approached, then it means you're only ever selecting your partners from among the people who chose to approach you. Whereas when you get confident approaching people, then like you're approaching the people that you're interested in. So, yeah, I'd say the number one mistake women make in particular is just never approaching.
Yeah. What if 'cause I have a thing I do. I learned throughout the years. I personally like it when women approach me. I like that's become I've actually like played with that in the aspect of to see how much someone in almost in a weird manipulative manner. I don't mean to, but like and so for someone like that, for someone who like wants the attention or wants the first move to be made by someone else, like that's their thing. What's your advice for that?
So, somebody who wants to be approached by somebody else?
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, that's going to depend a lot on your context. And it's gonna depend a lot on what kind of partners you're looking for. Because one thing that's important to keep about you, Nicholas, is you are a member of a kink community, right? You are a known entity among people.
Some of
And
us like being approached.
yeah, well, I think a lot of people like being approached, and it is such a good filter as a woman. Like, sorry, I'll just divert for a moment and then we'll come back to what if you like to be
Yes.
approached. But like if you're and again, like, I'm talking here in a gender binary at the moment, and I just wanna acknowledge that because, like, it's one of the trappings of our world as it is and our society as it is, but, like, there aren't just men and women in our world, right? Like, there are
Yes.
also non-binary people, and there's, like, agender people. So, like, there's a wide variety there, and so I noticed I'm slipping into this binary, so I wanted to call that out and just acknowledge it. So, with that said, um, if you're a woman who dates men and you don't really love this idea of femininity that's fed to you by society in terms of like you should submit all of your desires to your partner. And I'm not talking here about like consensual submission that we do in BDSM. That's totally different. I'm talking
Mhm.
more this like, I don't know, coerced submission that just because you're like a cisgendered heterosexual person who is a woman who's dating a man that like they should just be the boss. If you go out there and you approach people and then you get rejected by guys who say you're not feminine enough, like even though it hurts, like you just dodged a bullet, right? You've just done yourself a massive favor by like weeding that person out very quickly. Whereas if, they'd approached you, maybe you could have gotten a lot further down the pike before realizing, oh, hey, we are fundamentally incompatible. And now it's a bit more awkward to bring this to a close. So, with that said, if you like being approached by people, the easiest way to do that is to be part of a community where you become a known entity and then just make it known in general that you're single, like, or available. So if I think about the polyamory community I was a part of when I lived in Poland, because I lived in Poland for nearly 3 years, like, by being a member of that community, people knew that I existed, and also I knew who existed. I had a rough idea of what people's relationship constellations were like and what their preferences were because we all got to know each other. We spent time around each other. And that made it very easy for me to approach people. I think it also made it easy for people to approach me. And I think this happens a lot in BDSM or kink communities. If you go to the munch every month or every couple of weeks, depending on how frequently they happen in your community, if you show up, if people get a chance to know who you are, like, that makes it so much, like, it feels safer in a lot of ways to
Yes.
approach. Because if you're just gonna go and sit in a bar and then you're like, "Oh, woe is me, nobody's approaching me." It's like, well, think about it. Like, what is the context you're in? And who are the kind of people in a very general and broad context like that who might come and approach you? Because I also hear this from women too, that, "Oh, the only guys who ever hit on me are just like, you know, all men are assholes," right? Like, that's a trope that we hear. And it's like, well, if you go sit on a bar on a Friday night and you're not, like, proactively interacting with anybody, you're just sitting there, well, who is gonna come and approach you? Like, it's gonna be a very different sort of person than, say, like, a kinder, more respectful person who might just say, "Hey, this is a person who's hanging out. They're not giving any signals that they're open to conversation. Why would I go over and bother them?" It's like, and I think this is one of the things that when you start to understand the role that context plays in dating, sex, and relationships, you can make different choices about where to go looking for partners and have much, much better success meeting other people who want the same things you do.
Definitely. And you going to a munch especially has changed my life in many ways. Made me, what it does, it reminds me of the days. 'Cause I grew up in New York City in the club community, like doing raves and maybe like outlaw legal parties and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And there was that like anticipation of going out every night and like getting ready, getting music on to like pump yourself up, and that's what it's like, and it feels good to be feeling alive again, especially after the pandemic and everything.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Oh, I do want to say Jakuya for doing this interview, Sarah.
Wow, Popolsko. That's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. My in, we had there's a small Polish community in Jersey, and I am Polish myself.
Ah.
Tanek means immortal in Polish.
So sounds like you ought to come visit Poland sometime. You could do this whole Euro trip. You go to London and then come to Poland because Warsaw at least has an incredible sex positive culture and scene, which surprises people and with good reason because Poland, by and large, is a relatively conservative country. And they are a place where there is creeping neo fascism slowly wrapping its tendrils around various parts of life. They've got the most restrictive abortion legislation in all of Europe now. Women are dying because they're not getting access to the healthcare that they need. So, shout out for supporting the Polish organizations because it's rough. And at the same time, like, I think it's important to acknowledge, like, I'm thinking about Poland here, but then also thinking about the US and everything that's changing here too, is that, like, the world is grim and yet there is still so much joy to be found. And these communities are so precious. And, like, part of how we fight back is through connection, right? Like, that is part of what this system wants to strip away from us because the more isolated and fearful we are, the easier we become to control. I'll pause there for a minute because, like, that feels like a whole thread I could run down, and I want to see where you're at first.
Well, it's when I when I think of Poland. See, I'm a huge film nerd, and I think there's a Stanley Kubrick thing. The only masterpiece he thought was this Polish miniseries called Decalogue. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. So it was
No.
popular enough to go to the United States, but yeah, it's like from the '80s, and it's 10 stories based on 10 commandments, not religious at all, and it's all takes place in this housing block in Poland. It's a
Okay.
Poland, 100% Poland, and it's depressing, but at the same time, the whole thing, like everybody is connected together, and they're all trying to, they put together some pretty beautiful, I must say. It's interesting.
So
Anyway,
I will check that out. And in return, Nicholas, you must check out the Polish film Sex Misia, which was like, that's a film that was commissioned and produced during the People's Republic time. Like, that was made in communist Poland in the 80s. And it's amazing. I can, again, like, I can share the link with you afterwards to where you can go find it. But yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah, Decalogue. See, someone knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, if anybody's going to know, it's going to be Nick. So Nick knows a lot about cinema.
Person after my own heart. Okay, anti-fascism. Anti-fascism is something you're very passionate about. The word anti is against fascism. You know what that is. So it's like, do you think that the term anti-fascist or anti-fascist or even Antifa, do you think is being skewed by the media?
Yeah, of course it is. Like, and it's kind of, it's a bit, I don't know, maybe edgy to use that term, but like that is like essentially what I'm doing. And I often have friends say, "Oh, like, oh, fascism, isn't that a bit extreme?" And it's like, no, and when I say fascism, Nicholas, I'm not talking about like early 20th century fascism, like what you saw with Mussolini and Hitler, right? I'm talking about our present day neo fascism, which has taken the ultranationalism and xenophobia that was present in early 20th century fascism out into a borderless internet where it is spreading like poison all around the world. And there's this list of the like 14 signs of fascism. I will provide a link as well as a name because it's not in my head immediately. But it's worth going through this list because one of the hallmarks of fascism is sexism, which has huge implications for the realm of sexuality, but not just that, right? Like loads of these factors coalesce together, like in terms of wanting to strip away power and individual liberty and put that in the hands of authoritarian leadership, right? And we see this happening over and over and over again all around the world. And it's so remarkable and disturbing how the neo-fascists in Lithuania say the same things that the neo-fascists in America do, right down to like, complaining about some of the same American figureheads where you're like, y'all reading from the same book?
Yeah.
So
I want to ask this question: how so how can kinky people fight for sex rights?
wow, there's so many different ways you can go about fighting for sex rights. Like, one of the most important things to do is like center and support and elevate the people who are already in the trenches doing the work. Like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are already so many good organizations that are active in the world right now. So like me, myself, like I support the National Network of Abortion Funds in the United States and the Abortion Dream Team in Poland, because like this is right, sexual rights and freedoms encompasses a number of different things. And front of my mind at the moment is reproductive freedom, reproductive justice. So that's not just, access to reproductive health care being legal, it's also meaning that it's accessible, and that's what they did in this country, in the United States, for years, is that Like thinking about places like Texas. So even though it was nominally legal to get abortion if you needed it, they kept making it less and less accessible by putting in rules about like, abortion facilities having to have hallways which were so wide that it would mean most places would have to be retrofit. And like, there's not a lot of money in this, like with what funding, right? And so even if like on paper something was legal, it was in practice not accessible for a great deal many people. So that's why like that's very front of mind for me, but there are a number of organizations that are doing excellent work when it comes to agitating for LGBT plus rights, for example, or sex worker rights. And if you're trying to assess, is an organization a good one for me to support, like in the case of, okay, so if they're agitating for sex worker rights, are they centering sex workers? Is it an organization that's run by sex workers where they're listening to the needs of sex workers instead of like some of these like radical feminist organizations that like they won't even say sex worker, they'll say prostitute, and all prostitutes are victims. And it's just like, I can't even with these people. I'm like, have you even talked to a sex worker? But like, that's a whole rant for another day. For now, I'll just say like those are things to look at. So, it's not on your shoulders, Nicholas, to fix all of these problems, but how can you come together in connection and community with people who are doing the work and give them what they need? And a lot of times what these organizations need is money. Now, the other thing you can do, right? And this is where I think slutty activism has a really important role to play, is that looking at this plethora of problems that we face can be really overwhelming, and you can get really down and you can feel like this is hopeless, or I'm just one person, what can I even do? When you come to dating, sex, and relationships from this place of care, compassion, and direct communication, when you behave differently, when you go outside of those scripts, when you step off of the relationship escalator and refuse to perpetuate these toxic narratives about sexuality, right? When you become the living example in the lives of your friends and your family members and your acquaintances and your lovers and your play partners and your doms and your subs, like that is part of how you change the world. Like, because again, it doesn't stop with you, right? Like it can be, I think that's the big thought error a lot of us have, that the way we comport ourselves in relationships like starts and ends in that moment in time within that interaction. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? When you're in connection with someone, that has a profound impact on them. And then they can carry that forward and pass it on, right? So this is what gets me excited. I get tingles all over every time I talk about this, right? Because I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, right? But power generally needs to keep the working class or the great masses internally divided in order to rule them. And we've seen this throughout various systems of government, throughout various periods of history, and the contours change over time, but the basic principle is there, that when the masses are divided, they can be more easily controlled. And when we come together, we are a force unlike any other, right? So connection is a radical act. And so many things that we're taught that we should do in relationships, like they allow us to nominally get in relationships and still remain profoundly disconnected from each other. Like there are so many people who are in relationships and they feel lonely, right? It almost feels worse than when they were single because, hey, this was supposed to be the thing that remedied that deep loneliness. And wait, now here I am. I feel like I'm, sitting in a room with a stranger, right? That's profoundly sad. I'll pause here for a minute because, like, I feel like I'm like stepping up to my pulpit or on top of my soapbox, but I feel so passionately about these things. So,
no, I know what you mean. And so let's talk about someone who is like a couple who is in that kind of rut, because I'm sure you get tons of couples as well. They what, especially if couple that like really had a good run, right? And then, you know, age, time, there's a million and one things that can happen where the flame seems to be kind of unable to be reignited, so to speak. What do you what's your advice to a couple like that?
So, just wanna put it up front, by and large, I usually don't work with couples. I decided
Oh,
early
okay.
on, like, it is a lot of work. So
So
nowadays, the
someone who's in that
only
situation.
Yeah, I hear you. Just to nowadays, the only couples I work with are couples with mixed neurotype. So where there's a neurotypical partner and a neurodivergent partner, because there's often ways to that you can do things that a lot of other mainstream practitioners totally miss in those situations. But anyway, so we're talking about so the first thing, right, is that longevity isn't a marker of success in relationships, and I think that's
Sure.
that's part of the overall mythos that like for a relationship to be successful, it must last until one or the other person dies. And what does that do? Like, think about functionally what that does. It invalidates so many relationship types. And it makes you almost think that, oh, well, a one night stand is worthless. When actually nothing could be further from the truth, right? Like, one night stands have the potential to be connective and enriching and pleasurable and wonderful and totally successful, even when they last only one night. And so the first thing I would ask this couple, the first thing to do is for each of them as individuals to get curious about like what do they want at this point in life, right? What do they want? Not what do they think their partner wants, not what do they think that needs to happen for their partner to be happy, not what society wants them to want, but like what they actually want. And once that's established, then there's a process of looking, you know, vulnerably together at those collection of wants and asking, do we have compatible desires, first of all? And that's the place to begin because what you do next is going to depend entirely on what comes out of that conversation. And because I did work with couples in the past, again, before I decided too much work, um, is right. So you sometimes have couples who say, okay, well, we do want to stay married, but yeah, we don't have compatible sexual desires or even compatible relational desires.
Hmm.
And so then at that point, it's like, okay, well, so then what would that recreated relationship look like? Because another part of my role as a clinician in a case like that would be to give permission that they can rewrite their relationship however they want, right? Like, it doesn't have to look a specific way. All it has to do is be a relationship that they've designed where they both want to participate in it, right? So, you could choose to stay married and then decide, okay, what that might mean for us is we're not going to cohabitate anymore. We're going to live on our own and we're going to spend a certain amount of time together, or we're going to stay married because, like, on paper, it's very practical. It's the best thing to do to
Oh yeah.
protect our assets. Like, there's so many options, right? And if it's a couple who it's like, yes, we want to stay together. Yes, we have compatible desires and we've kind of missed each other, then it would be a different approach in terms of how can we bring them back into pleasure, back into the space of co-creating and co-conspiring to make pleasure together. And that very often, the first step is about coming back into the body and becoming present again with one another. And that's where sensate focus exercises can be incredible that Masters and Johnson developed a very long time ago. Like, those still can help people get back into touch when they've gotten totally out of whack. So
You
I'll
know, I
pause
have
there, but it's
never.
just to say there's a lot that can be done, but the fundamental question is what do you want?
Yeah. You know what? I think. I mean, I've seen it work. I even last night, a lot of my very good friends who are in marriages, and it's not that like they're still they love their husbands. You know, their husbands are there, but they're all with other people as well. Everyone's with other people. Everyone's with someone else. But it's like they're helping each other meet other people, which is I think can strengthen the relationship. You know what I mean? Um, oh, I think you're freezing. Yeah. Mm. Oh, you're back? Or
Oh,
can you hear me?
am I back?
No, you may
Can you
want to.
hear me?
I could hear you. I can't, but you're frozen.
I can, yeah.
I mean, no, you are frozen.
Okay, I'm not frozen on my side.
No, you're definitely.
But you
You're
can me.
definitely. You want to come back and come back in or something? Well, anyway, yeah, that was Sarah Martin. We'll try to pick this up. Um, yeah, you're totally frozen.
I'm still here.
Oh no, you're back. Oh, great, awesome. Okay, so yeah, what I'm saying is like, if I think
Hey.
with the right attitude, right? Hello.
Oh no, I don't know what's happening.
All right. So, oh, you know what? We should cut it short for now, and we can always do a part two. Okay.
Okay, I would love to do a part 2.
Yeah, yeah, this is great. I definitely want to continue this talk. If you, I don't know if you want to risk it. What do you think?
We can try and finish this one, and if it goes all blah, blah, blah again, then we can call it quits for
Okay.
today.
All right. Yeah. No, we're done. We're pretty much done. We're pretty much done.
So
So,
to that end,
all right.
oh, I just wanted to respond to what you said, which is that I absolutely think that that can work for a lot of relationships. The main thing is, like, see sometimes people coming to non-monogamy being like, "Oh, let's just do this to fix the relationship." And the main thing is, like, you can be setting yourself up for failure if that's the mindset. Whereas instead, if you're both coming to it because you actively, individually want to give that a try, then it can be a thing that absolutely changes lives for the better.
Mhm, definitely. I totally agree. Okay. So, personally, you,
Me.
yes. Interest goes deep when it comes to sex and sexuality. Are there any kind of new things that piques your interest personally?
I mean, there's lots of things that pique my interest, Nicholas. I have for a long time now wanted to get my hands on a sex robot because I want to see what that's like. Um, and I mean, something that's not so new but would be new to me is I've still never tried a Sibian. Like, I want to hop on one of those and see what that's like. So that's also on my to-do list.
For those who don't know, please explain what a Sibian is.
It's like this thing that kind of looks like a horse saddle and is very powerful, or has the capacity for very powerful vibration. It's great for clit people, and you can use it in all sorts of kinky ways. Like, you can kind of suspend yourself or restrain yourself, so it can be fun for like forced orgasm play, for example.
Yeah, it's very common in femdom when it comes to sissification, or
Hmm.
chastity play. Like you lock someone up and you lock a cock up in chastity, and that the method may have them sit on it to kind of just sexually torture them. Yeah,
Yep, that would work.
it does. So, oh, okay, okay. So out there, buy Sarah Martin, the sex robot. That so we should use this as a GoFundMe as a GoFundMe.
Yeah,
Do it.
hook
Set
me
up a
hook me
GoFundMe
up.
page for Sarah Martin wants the sex robot.
Mm.
Say it's for research.
Or just, yeah, connect me with somebody who needs a reviewer.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. That's the way. Yeah. It's good. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing that review. Definitely. That would definitely.
I'll let you know if it happens, Nicholas.
I'm gonna try to make that happen for you. That's what I could. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So rapid fire recommendations. They don't have to be sex related. They can be, but they don't have to be. Recommend a film.
Oh, I'm not good at rapid fire. Je ne suis pas un homme facile. I am not an easy man. Incredible French film. So very good.
I was just talking to people in France, Paris, France. I was working on the dominatrix, Heart of the Dominatrix with Anna Justice. She interviewed, like I think maybe like 60, but made only 20 made the book. Dominatrixes from around the world, and
Oh,
it's a
awesome.
beautiful, beautiful book with all. And I've interviewed those people too, you know. And I had her on the show, and it's like, oh yeah, I got a thing for French culture, like the underground
You will love
feminist.
this movie, I suspect.
Yeah, but like especially like the feminist Virginia King Kong theory and Base Moi. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It
That's
Base
a
Moi is
film.
yeah. She directed that film and wrote it and wrote the book about
Ah, okay.
the book is more of like this hardcore feminist, you know, I guess Thelma and Louise do tons of drugs and kill people type thing.
Oh,
You know?
yeah. Yes, I
Yeah.
remember seeing that film in the video rental place when I was a young person and being like, because
Oh yeah.
I
It's
took French
banned.
in school, so I was like,
It's yeah, it's wild. So okay, so that's the film. Recommend a song, and it doesn't have to be your representation of who you are. Just be, hey, this is a good song.
Zeit by Rammstein. It's great. Or
Nice.
Sight.
Every
Like, I
time I
always
think
pronounce the S's and Z's wrong. Sue me.
every time I think of Rammstein, I now think of Lars von Trier's Nymphomaniac. I don't know if you ever
Mm,
see that movie, but
yeah.
yeah, Rammstein has a song in the beginning that's really out of place in the movie, but like tonally, but it's a good. Okay. Recommend art, any kind of art, any medium, any artist, anything.
My brother, Jake Lyon, check out
Okay.
his deviant art. He's incredible. He's or Nick Gothic, who's here in the room, who's also an incredible illustrator. The two of them immediately come to mind.
Okay. Recommend a television show.
Oh, I don't watch much TV. Oh, a Halloween baking championship. That's what I've been watching recently.
I haven't seen the new one. Last year around this time, I was sick, and all I had was cooking shows. Come on, that was it.
Food Network, something about it. I love those the baking
Like,
like they're just so chill. It's just so not serious and very
I know.
warm and lovely.
That's why the best ones are not the ones where like Gordon Ramsay's yelling and screaming at people. It's the ones that are where everyone's like really just trying to make something really delicious and awesome.
Yes.
Another one was good was Must Feed Phil. It's on Netflix where he goes around the
Okay.
world eating. That one's good. All right, recommend a book.
Uh, The Tragedy of Heterosexuality by Jane Ward. I'm reading that right now.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. I gotta check that out. I'm very interested. That sounds like that's a great title.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, Zeit by Ramstein is Chef's Kiss. Yes. And then, oh, okay, this guy Dirk says my dick has 27 centimeters. I have a problem with my heart. Okay. Sorry to hear that. So, all right. So, new games from rapid fire. Okay. What would you like to promote? Use this to, this time to promote everything and anything that you want to promote, or your friends, or anything.
So come listen to my podcast. It's called Slutty Activism, and you can find it everywhere fine podcasts can be found. It's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, it's on Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Undercast, really anywhere. And yeah, that's Slutty Activism. So if anything I've said today has resonated with you, go check it out. Season 1 is out now. I'm doing it Netflix style, so I'm just dropping whole seasons at once and you can learn more about it. And then if you want to come hang out with me, come spend some time in the Slutty Activism podcast community Facebook group. You can find that very easily by going to sluttyactivism.group. And if you want to know more about me, what I do, you can head over to my website. That's dignifiedhedonist.com. And I don't know, like, there's so, like you said about my friends, I have so many amazing friends who are all doing so many amazing things. Maybe I should let you know about them, and then they can come and talk to your kinky friends about all that they're doing too.
I would absolutely love that. That would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
because we need to start the Munch Network and like get cake toppers going. But then, like, and so Kincaid, it seems like you need to be on the writers team for that
Yeah.
network to make that happen. And like that, wouldn't that be a dream to have like
Yeah.
Food Network but kinky?
Hell yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be great.
You could even
We
have
can
a
have
show
one.
about like cooking for a sex party. Because like if you go to clubs and stuff, there's usually food. And like
Mhm.
any sex party I've ever been to, there's always food. Like,
Yeah, that's true. Like the amount of different kinds of brownies I saw last night because it was fuck. It's so sexy.
mm. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. But like, please come check out the podcast and come hang out with us. And feel free to reach out to me. I'm a real human being. I still do my own email. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
Definitely. Oh, check out the doctor's thesis too. That's online.
Oh yeah. That's I can make sure to give you a link so that people can directly click because it's like a long URL with the PDF name in it.
That's cool. Okay, stay on the line after we're done. It is, gonna start my weekend. It's getting late. My dom is calling me.
You got to go, man.
I gotta go. Yeah. Check me out, yourkinkyfriends.com, Friends Kinky. The whole crew's there. Your Kinky Friends on Instagram, Nick Tanek on Instagram, or on Twitter, Nicholas Tanek. We have a Discord chat group, we have a Patreon, and yeah, we're like I said, we do this for the love. So yeah, come join us. Have some fun. Let's start a network together. That'd
Oh
be
yeah.
great. And everybody, remember the cardinal rule: be cool, be kind, keep an open mind. Take care.